Welcome back to AndyTube. I'd like to take you on a tour now of the Singer Model 338. I did a tour of the features, but this time I want to show you the inside working mechanisms of it. And I should probably apologize now for the editing I'll be doing later on this video. I've had to go to a new video editing software, and I'm still learning it, which is obvious if you watch the tour of the features, but I hope to get better. But anyway, let's start. We're going to take off all the covers here. As typical with many of the Singers of this day, this 1964-65 model, there's two screws at the top left and right of the arm cover. So we'll quickly take those off, and the whole metal arm cover, which is metal, which is cast aluminum, comes right off. And one thing I didn't mention in the tour of the features, I think, is this model was made in Great Britain, which means it was made in Kilbowie, Scotland, at their big factory there. Let me move around to the front end here, and you'll see just a thumb screw right here on the lower left of the nose plate that you can remove to expose the nose end here, the working end. And I will move these screws so I don't lose them. And let me come around to this the motor hand wheel end, and there's two screws here. There's one you probably can't see that's right up below the hand wheel itself, and there's another one at the bottom of this end plate or motor cover plate, and that gives you access so that you can remove the hand wheel if you want. You can remove the motor belt, and you can adjust the height of the motor and remove it. Again, this is all cast aluminum, back in the good days. So let's start up here at the top, or the horizontal arm, and take a look at some of these mechanisms here. The hand wheel, the motor belt, running all through here is the horizontal arm shaft. You see a better picture of the shaft right here, but that shaft continues from the nose end on the left all the way to the end of the hand wheel on the right. And what we see up here as we come inside, this is the bobbin, part of the bobbin winder system. Just this lever that moves the spindle and friction ring over against the inside of the hand wheel so that the hand wheel can turn the spindle. We'll see a cam and the feed forked connection that goes down below. We'll see the top of the feed lifting rock shaft that helps lift and rock the feed dogs. Come over a little bit more. We can see a metal gear that sits vertically on the horizontal shaft that meshes down in here with a horizontal gear that's on top of what can be called either the vertical shaft that goes runs down through here to run the mechanisms. This part of the machine where this is called the arm, this part can be called the vertical or the horizontal, this whole area here. So that's the gearing connections or system that run that vertical or upright shaft, which I'll show you down below later. This mechanism is part of the needle positioning bracket that actually moves the needle arm left, center, or right. You can see that mechanism doesn't move very much here. You kind of watch it close. And then let's take this top piece off here. That's the retaining nut on the top of the cam stack, and I'll remove the zigzag cam so we can get a better picture down in here. So you see the top of the camshaft right here, little cam stack. It's a little guy. Every zigzag machine has to have a cam to make the needle swing back and forth. So when they started doing these style discs or pattern discs, they exposed access to the cam stack and made a way to put discs on there. And that cam is geared at the bottom, and it mates up with a horizontal worm gear that's on the shaft. So when the motor turns the hand wheel and the belt, that turns this whole arm shaft, which makes these mechanisms move, including the worm gear, which goes up to the front. We'll see in a moment. I wanted to show you this is your stitch width, and you see the follower come over. When I move it from straight stitch over to zigzag or width, you see that little follower arm is going to go over and ride along the cam, and this little part that sticks up right there is going to follow along the pattern of that cam. And you'll see kind of the top of the light fixture down in here. Maybe I can turn that on. Oops, I don't got it plugged in. Let me plug it in real quick. You can see the top of the light fixture. There we go. See it down in there. The switch, by the way, only powers on and off the light. When it's plugged in, the motor has got electricity and you can sew. And let me move this around to the nose and we'll take a nice close look at that. Okay, so here is the presser bar where you attach the presser foot. You see the spring and you see the pressure adjustment. It just screws down and up to put more or less pressure. You see the spring and the presser bar lifter lever that moves that up, but there's always tension from the spring. And then this is the needle bar, and the needle bar rocker or swing needle assembly that allows the needle bar to swing back and forth so you get your zigzag. And you see the thread uptake lever up here, and I guess let me run this a little bit so you can see this moving here. You see the needle bar going up and down, and in the back here you may be able to see the needle bar crank, kind of a counterweight going, and the lift mechanism for the thread. Okay, this of course is the thread tension unit I talked about in the feature tour that calibrated and adjusts tension on the needle thread. Let's see if we can open this up, and maybe I can take the needle plate out again, and you can see here's the feed dog, there's the feed dogs, the bobbin case, and we can remove this bobbin case. You don't have to do it when you're putting the bobbin in and out, but you can lift this lever and swing the bobbin case holder and cushion spring to your right and wiggle this bobbin case and pull it out. So that's where that class 66 bobbin sits in there, just like that. Here's give you a closer look, and this is all metal bobbin case. Years later they went to the Apollo bobbin case, which is about 95% plastic, but back in this time the tension springs, screws, the whole case was beautiful milled piece of steel. See if I can turn the hand wheel a little bit and show you the let me zoom in here a little bit. I talked about this as an oscillating bobbin versus a rotary, or oscillating hook versus a rotary hook. It's about as close as I can zoom, but you can see the hook point right there. That's what grabs your needle thread and brings it around and wraps it around the bobbin thread to form the lock stitch. And on a rotary hook, this hook would just go around in a like a counterclockwise circle all the time. But on an oscillating hook, when it gets down here to the cast off point so that the thread can cast off and go around the bobbin thread, as the machine keeps working, you'll see this oscillates the hook point back up to just beyond the needle, so that on the next stroke it grabs the thread again and brings it down here to the cast off point. So it just goes up and back down, back up and back down. Let me run it a little, and you can see the feed dogs will be lifting and the hook will be oscillating. Oh, that's a pretty good shot, actually. So you see the hook does not go around. It kind of oscillates back and forth or up and down if you're sitting in front of it. That was a pretty good shot. Okay, let me back out here and we'll continue on and see if I can get down to the motor end and give you a better. Oh, I'm a little close here, aren't I? Here's the motor sitting right back in here with the pulley and the motor belt that comes up and goes around the back of the hand wheel. So when that motor turns, it turns the pulley, and the belt system is what turns the hand wheel. And that hand wheel is bolted right onto that horizontal arm shaft and moves all those forked feed connection and the feed lifting rock shaft and everything else up there at the top. So that's that back end. There's also electrical connections down here, of course, where the cord plugs in. And let's get down here and take a look at the bottom, because I know that's what a lot of you want to see, is the difference between this generation, the 337 and 338, versus the 347 and 348. So let's take off the drip pan or oil pan. I haven't opened this up yet. Let's see, it's kind of, oh, there we go. See, I got a lot of sticky stuff down here. Oh, it doesn't look too bad. Some corrosion here usually means somebody used something besides motor oil, or use something besides sewing machine oil. Let's see if I can back this out a little bit so we can see the whole thing here. That's a little bit better. So here's the end of the electrical connection. You see the side of the motor. See that silver part in there? Right there's how the motor, whoops, right in there is the motor sitting. And then these are the feed fork connection and the feed rock connection. And these, back out, these make movement over here to the feed dogs. And that's what makes the feed dog move up and down and back and forth. And they time it so it's like an oscillating, it pulls the fabric through while the needle's going up and down, or pushes it back towards you if you're sewing in reverse. And this is the oscillating hook shaft and crank over here. Now in the 347 and 348, they replaced this with two pulleys and a belt. And I think it was just cheaper for them. They're fierce competition from Japan by this time, and there was a couple dozen sewing machine companies over there undercutting the price of Singer, cloning their machines and so forth. So I was sorry to see that go. And the 347 and 8 are beautiful machines. I've restored them, but I kind of like the 337 and 338 because this is still metal. I always have just liked the metal drive mechanisms, like the 301, 401, 404, 403, 500, 503. But some of these less expensive lines, like this StyleMate line, back in 64 and 65, they still had these metal mechanisms. Now some people say that the oscillating hook is noisier than the rotary, and the rotary is a smoother operating system. So I guess it just depends. But let me run this guy excuse me, and you'll see some action here. Try and go slow. So up there you can see the oscillating hook doing its thing, oscillating. The hook is connected by the shaft right here. It goes up to the hook, and you can see this mechanism just rocks it back and forth. The bell crank, and then down here you can see these rocking and lifting feed shafts are the mechanism that moves that feed dog. Where I showed you the vertical, I told you about this vertical shaft that comes down through the upright, had a gear on the top. Down here it has just this mechanism and a crank. Didn't have a gear to make it go round and round. So very good, very system. You know, this kind of thing going back to the first steam engines that were invented. And I guess they stayed with it because what's wrong with it? Look at it. Woohoo! Okay. More power. Okay. So there's a there's a good tour for you of the inside working mechanisms of this 338 model. And the 337 is just like this, except it doesn't have a removable disc for the zigzag and the, you know, and this what was called the style disc. It has a disc like this in the 337 that works the zigzag system, and the following mechanism to push the arm and swing that needle back and forth. But it doesn't have an access cover and changeable disc. And when I get into the bobbin winding and needle threading and stuff, I'll show you all the accessories that came with this, and I'll do a video of sewing a little bit just to show you how it does, and I'll use 2 or 3 different style discs. I can't show you the feed regulator back in there without taking this whole cover plate off, but I do want to say that it was right about this time that Singer started calling this the stitch length lever instead of the feed system. They'd always called it in conjunction because it does control how far the feed dogs move, which is really what what controls the length of your stitch. And I think everybody in the world just called it stitch length lever. So in their instruction manual, Singer actually did start calling this the stitch length lever. But in their parts diagrams and their ordering books and most of their repair and service documents, they still called it the feed. So a little trivia for you. Thanks a lot for joining me on this look at the inside working mechanisms. Let's see the top up here go. I think I showed you this. You can see the forked feed connection. You can see the top of the feed lifting. You might be able to see the gear that connects with the vertical shaft gear turning there. Get in here a little bit. And you can see the cam. The cam shaft always goes around, even when you're in straight stitch, because the cam gear touches that worm gear. So it's only when you engage the zigzag that follower comes over. See if I can do this before I run out of time here. the follower will come over. Now watch this move when I go to zigzag. See how that came over? And now when it goes around, you can see how that follower just follows whatever pattern. If it was a blind hem pattern, that's what it would sew. And I did take that slide plate off. It's as close as I can get the way I'm set up. You can see the rocking mechanism that goes underneath and around the hook and moving those feed dogs back there. Okay, hey, I hope that was a pretty good tour for you. I enjoyed it. And for some of you that asked about the difference in the 337 and 347, 338, 348, it was mostly that you have access to the cam stack and you have some styling cams, and this still has the all metal mechanisms underneath, including the hook, where the 347 and 348, they did away with all this and just put a couple pulleys and a belt. And that also made the hook a rotary hook. Forgot to mention that. When they went to the pulley and belt and removed all this mechanism, the hook shaft just came down and attached into the pulley, so when the belt went around, the hook went around. And they had to kind of change the timing on the feed dogs and stuff to make it all work. But that was the main change. So they went, this still has metal and oscillating hook, and the 348 went to pulleys and a belt and a rotary hook. Kind of cool, huh? So, hope you come back and watch my channel as I do a few more videos of these down the road, and just a simple how to wind the bobbin, thread the needle, a little sewing, changing the cam, and a couple of the different patterns. See you next time. Take care.